Hey, everybody, welcome to the Grow Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Kevin McNulty, and this is your personal development school of growth, where each week my guests and I will bring and break down big ideas and practices that will help you learn, grow, and succeed in life. Thanks for checking us out. Now let the growth begin. Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Grow Yourself, where it is our goal for each and every episode is to frankly deep dive into topics and stories that teach us, that may shape us, that even push us to be better people and professionals every single day. Now, I want to start off by saying this, that, it's no secret that we all have limitations, but too often it is our perception of our limitations that hold us back from succeeding. Growing up, I had serious struggles, particularly in my younger years, even as a young adult, with my own, limitations, if you will. But you see, simultaneously, I was lucky enough to grow up and maintain really a tremendous curiosity, this curiosity, despite my self-limiting beliefs, this curiosity always led me to ask questions. And that was a real key in my life. And so throughout my life, these two characteristics, they often converged. On the one hand, I struggled with confidence and faith in myself and the imposition, if you will, of self-limiting beliefs. But on the other hand, I also tended to ask provocative questions, things like, Kevin, what is possible? And so at some point in my life, I realized that my self-limiting thoughts and beliefs, they just weren't going to go away or disappear completely. So I learned to and adopted this mantra of do it afraid. And so like everyone else, I still struggle with my self-limiting beliefs, but now my curiosity rules my fear. Thus, I step in, I guess you could say up to the edge of the proverbial cliff and jump. And almost every time the net will appear. It's like my old friend Robin Crow his book, Jump and the Net Will Appear. I've learned to completely believe in that concept. And that's what my guest and I will be talking about today. But my guest has really a unique and really a fascinating twist on this whole notion of limiting beliefs and possibility thinking. And so my guest, he talks about, and we will be speaking about what he calls redefining what's possible. It's a fascinating look that you're going to hear a lot of things. So we're going to get into, these ideas that will help you redefine what's possible in your own life, whether it's sharpening your focus, building unshakable confidence, or just shifting your mindset to embrace challenges. And so let me introduce my guest. As a senior partner and VP of recruiting for Southwestern Consulting, Ron Alford is a record-breaking business coach, sought-after speaker, and ultra-endurance athlete, which we will be asking him about, with a passion for helping people reach their full potential. As an expert in recruiting, sales, and coaching, Ron has recruited, interviewed, and hired well over 100 sales professionals during his 3-decade career. But there's more. He is also the author of the best-selling book, Redefining Possible, Proven Strategies to Break Belief Barriers and Create Your New Normal, which has been revised and is now available in paperback. And we're going to be asking him about all of those things. So if you will, please welcome Ron Alford. Ron, thank you so much for being here with us on Grow Yourself.
Yeah, come on. Thank you, Kevin. Excited to dig in with you.
And I know you're out in Seattle. I'm here in Nashville, and I just have to point out, to be able to have access to people like you, man, it's a beautiful thing. I love technology in this way.
Mm.
So let me just ask you this, just right off the bat: why redefining possible? Why redefine?
Yeah, gosh, I think a lot of life is rewiring. It's adjustments. I always look around and feel like the people that are the most fulfilled, the people that are the most content or joyful, regardless of circumstance, are able to adapt. They're able to adjust. And, I'm I'm sure no different than you, Kevin. Like we've been doing what we do a long time. That doesn't mean much at all. Like we have to constantly be adapting and pivoting, course correcting. And so the whole idea of redefining is just, we all have these beliefs and definitions of things. This is trying to stretch our mind. Like I love your word, curiosity, you talked about. If we really get curious, man, what is possible? That's the premise.
Wow, that's fantastic. I love it. I've talked about this subject for many years, but I've never heard the idea of redefining. And as soon as I saw it in the title of your book, I was like, bam, there it is right there. So, well, listen, before we get too deep in, Ron, would you just mind telling the audience a little bit about, your early years? Who are you? Where'd you grow up? Just anything about your early life.
Yeah, heck yeah. Military kids, so moved around a lot. Dad was 40 years Navy. Both older brothers went into the Marine Corps. And
Wow.
so, a lot of moving California, Colorado, Washington, high school is Alaska, the tip of the Aleutian Islands, believe it or
Mm.
not. Uh, Not the most scenic area. uh, and I was real close. I mean, Kevin, I was going to follow the family path and was prepping for boot camp
Oh,
32 years ago and heard about a summer job and a different internship and decided to do that instead. And gosh, 31 years later, I'm with the same company. So
wow.
that's,
No, that's fantastic. I didn't realize that you were a fellow brat, you know.
yeah,
I too grew up as a military brat,
yep,
and we do have a very special kinship, don't we? A very special bond brats have
yeah,
of
heck
having
yeah.
moved around and being part of that whole military culture and that sort of thing. So now tell us maybe a little bit about your career path. So you passed on the Navy and decided to do Southwestern internship, and just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's some of your listeners may be familiar, especially in greater Nashville.
Hmm.
Headquarters is in Nashville, over 160 years, recruiting university students to sell door to door kids' educational products. And I had never sold a dang thing in my life. I was 19 years old and just felt like, man, this is worst case. I'm going to learn a lot. I'm going to grow. They enticed us, if you do well, you can make some good money.
Yeah.
And that summer, about 40 of us from Seattle went to Dallas, Texas. I'd never been around humidity and did 14-hour days of door to door. And you talked about just kind of a refined by the fire, like learning how to build trust quickly, learning how to get referrals, learning how to help people make decisions, learning how to keep going when you don't want to, just all those things. I hated it, to be honest. I hated rejection. I hated being my own boss and being alone and just feeling like I was on an island. Uh,
Wow.
but at the end of the summer, it left a pretty nasty taste in my mouth over, I think, things that were revealed about me, like I
Oh,
was not proud
interesting.
of, like the way I was very conditional with people,
Mm.
the discipline that I thought I had that I didn't. And
Mm.
that really struck a chord in me coming back for a second summer to try to make that right, grow, do better, and then
Yeah.
learn recruiting and bringing some people with me. And
Hmm.
so brought a 5-person team that next summer and came back. And that's when I started to kind of fall in love with it a little bit, where it's like, okay, this is the hardest thing I could imagine doing, but yet I loved it. It was just this mental test that I loved. And so the short version is I spent 20 years there. I was the director of the West Coast in Canada and kind of ran a lot of the universities. And before I pivoted 11 years ago to a different part of Southwestern.
Wow. I'm thinking about, so when you were down in Dallas and started doing this door to door, so you would have been what, early 20s?
Let's see, 19 was first summer. So yeah,
Wow.
yep.
I mean, how does a 19-year-old, and I'm kind of asking this also for those might be wishfully thinking here, the 19-year-olds watching this podcast. How do you develop that sort of thinking at that age, when it's all about the rejection and learning things you don't like, but then you went back and regrouped, I guess is what I'm hearing. I mean, how would a 19-year-old do that today? How do they encounter a situation like that and say, "Hey, wait a second."
Yeah, I think this is where our programming is so big, right? And of course, the people we're around. If my mom or dad or friends would have called me and said, "Oh, it's okay, honey. Like, life's hard. When you don't like it, go ahead and come home. We'll fluff your pillow for you." And
Wow. Yeah.
I don't
No,
mean to
I'm
be
getting it.
insensitive at all. There's
No,
certain
no, no,
things
no,
that you
no.
did,
Mm-mm. You
but
preaching to
that
the
was
choir, baby.
where my dad told me before the
Mm.
summer they didn't really love my decision to do what I was going to do, but if I was going to do it, you follow through, son. You do it.
Wow.
You keep going. And
Wow.
yeah, I just think being raised with those kind of principles, it was both feet in. I burned my boats. There was no turning around. And even when good friends and people I knew were leaving the summer, uh, and so that's a lot of it. I don't think it was anything special I did, but it was people that had helped my mind be prepared for something
Mhm.
like this. And then
Mm.
when when you have a bad taste in your mouth over something, give me another chance. I want to prove that I can do
Yeah.
this the right way. That's what kept me back for that second summer.
But you mentioned about the principles that you learned, and that's, I think, not enough people talk about those, about principles, and that principles can be so powerful if you just understand that, let's say, one of the principles for success is, you know, go back one more time and try again. I mean,
Mhm.
just these sorts of things, as opposed to what you just said, which I think is running a little bit more rampant than it should. I believe in our country, the sort of the helicopter parent and the it's okay and however you feel and this, that, and the other. And I'm not saying that, I guess maybe to your point that all of that is completely wrong. There might be a place for it, but if you don't let your kid fail, they're just not going to learn about resilience and the things that you talk about. So
Got it.
speaking
Oh,
of
and it's hard, right? As the parent,
yeah,
it's like,
yes, it
I have
is.
now have three kids in my, high school and middle school kids in my
Mm,
house that, oh, I want to save them. I want to jump in
mhm,
and be there for them and defend them. And so no one's saying this is easy, but I am
mm.
so dang glad now, 31 years later, that my parents, pushed me and helped me get out of my comfort zone. And because that changes your life.
I love it. That's just straight up good wisdom right there. So speaking of resilience and embracing the suck, as they say, you are an ultra endurance athlete, I understand. I
Nice
mean, I
pivot there.
just, people invite me to come run 5Ks, and I'm like, I mean, if I can walk, I'll probably go.
Yeah.
How do you do that, dude?
Well, I don't really know either. It was years ago where I had kind of gotten into the half marathon thing, and then a friend just said, "Man, as you get older, the more you can run on dirt, the better. Like that
Yeah.
pavement will get you." And so I was like, "Oh, that's a good point." I started doing a little more trail, and oh, I fell in love with that.
Wow.
Like less focus on the watch, the time, like versus just fresh air, getting away from traffic, getting away from noise and people and just nature. And so it's not about the medals to me. It's more
Yeah. Love it.
a lot of what I've done has been running around Mount Rainier or doing the Grand Canyon or things that there's no organized race. There's no fans cheering you on. It's just getting out and seeing this beautiful world of ours on foot. And but kind of going back to what I said about the summer job is it breaks you no matter how much you train, your body's going to break down during an event like that, and it's your mind that gives you that second wind, that third wind, that fifth
Mm,
wind.
mm.
So that's what I love about it.
Mm. And may I just ask, what's the longest distance that you've taken on?
102 miles
Oh,
last summer in the Oregon Cascade Mountains. So what's funny is a
uh,
lot of times it's not even about the miles. It's because I've done 10-mile things that were harder than 20-mile things. The elevation gains and the technical. Uh, but yeah, last summer did one that was 102.
who was it that did something like a 250? I mean, somebody's fairly popular out there in our world.
Goggins
Yeah, Doggins, that's right.
talks about it a lot.
Doggins,
Yeah,
yeah,
a lot
yeah,
of
yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah. I think he's out here in this area. I think he lives in Franklin or something.
I think so.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a different level, and it's who knows? Maybe someday I'll. But for now,
Well,
100
yeah.
is plenty for me.
Listen, 100 is, in all of our worlds is makes you a badass. So I'm just going to leave it at that, you know. So Ron, your book, it there's a fair amount of focus on, sort of breaking belief barriers, if you will. May I just ask, what is maybe the most significant barrier that you've had to break in your life?
Yeah, gosh, the most significant I would say is time. How I view time. Uh, so I think a
Interesting.
lot of readers or people might think the whole book is about just getting records or higher money earning, et cetera. And there's absolutely principles in there on that as well. But to me, it's a shift in how we look at capacity. Uh, I think we're brought up with, oh, I didn't have time for that, or I'm either going to be the healthy fitness person, or I'm going to be active as a parent, or I'm going to be really committed to my job, or I'm going to be involved in philanthropic, um, nonprofit type volunteer. But then we limit ourselves as to, oh, but I can't do all that. And so it's trying to take this different look that if you really get focused, if you get intentional, it is possible. Less oftentimes is more. 20 minutes of this, when done the right way, can be more effective than 1 hour of that done the wrong way.
Oh, I see.
And so it's been a mental shift of how I view 5 minutes, how I view a half day,
Hmm.
redefining what is possible with the time we've been given.
That's very interesting. I'm glad you clarified that because my first thought was, well, I mean, we do have limitations, you know, but you're suggesting that more might be possible if you just understand your capacity, your time, how you look at time, and your wherewithal to get something done. Yes.
Yeah, you got it. And I think any parent on here, you probably tell your children, don't say the word can't.
Mm,
So we as parents are good at telling our kids things like this.
mm,
In our household, can't is the worst swear word. But yet as parents, we say, I can't do this, I can't do that.
yeah.
And we aren't the best examples
Yeah.
oftentimes. I sure hadn't been or aren't always.
Here,
And
here.
so it's like, okay, let me slow down. And before I say I can't do this, let me just take a breath, think about it for a minute. Don't overanalyze it, but is it possible to do this, to be the parent that coaches your kids and be
Mm,
that committed in your business where you can build your business and just kind of attacking things from a different angle?
wow. Now I know, and I hope you don't mind me bringing it up, that your son was diagnosed with leukemia, and I'm curious to understand maybe how did you, how did that maybe that experience redefine, what is possible for you, or even what possible meant for you.
Hmm. Well, gosh, you have a way of shifting into the right topic because to me that's what makes me passionate about it. I think anybody can read John Maxwell books and listen to podcasts and kind of quote things, and that's probably where I was years ago. But I think that example of my son being diagnosed is what makes me so convicted
Hmm.
on this topic. That was a look in the mirror moment where when I finally accepted my situation, I wasn't going to change the diagnosis. Well, I have these other kids. I still have my business. I still have other commitments. I'm married, et cetera, et cetera. But if I'm going to be there with this boy at Seattle Children's Hospital and with him and present and turn my work off, turn my phone off, like I've got to learn how to focus like I've never learned, like I've never done it before. And that's that shift. I think that first 6 months of realizing, okay, I can still do this. I can, and getting some confidence, getting some wind beneath my feet, and realizing, okay, I can be that present dad, be there with my son in his time of need, but yet still be the dad to my other kids and the husband and involved in my church and running my business and everything else that is required. But I gotta get locked in.
I think you talk also about compartmentalizing ideas. If you didn't talk about it directly, I did have a really the privilege of perusing your book and trying to dig a little bit into it. And so, I know as I think about those things, if I think about one of my children being in that condition or my wife or something, man, it would take my breath away and, whew, I would go, my first question would be, how am I going to do this, God? I
Mm.
mean, how am I going to do this? But so you figured out that it's possible to do all of that and still pay attention to the most important thing in your life at that moment, which I would suppose at least, is your son and his diagnosis. But then how do you compartmentalize? How do you I literally don't know how you turn to your work and block that out.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I fully did. I don't think anybody can block out.
Fair
He was
enough.
7 years old at the time, and just to be really honest with the listeners, but gosh, I sure felt like I got close,
Wow.
and I just think that's what we owe that to. If I'm going to have a client that's paying money and trusting me to be their coach,
Yeah.
or if I have a daughter, I have my son that was diagnosed has a twin.
Oh,
Those kids deserve their dad. Like my wife still needs me to be the husband that so that was that moment where it's like just realizing uh you can grieve, you can have your emotions. That's the basis of emotional intelligence, right? Is
mm,
I'm very aware that in this moment I'm hurt, I'm broken, I'm on my knees, I'm grieving, etc. You're aware, you're naming your feelings and emotions, but yet okay, this morning I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to work out. I'm going to have prayer time, meditation, whatever works for the person. Eat right, focus on the little things more than ever. When we want to scroll social media to numb the pain or go to alcohol or go to more sugar or whatever those things are to numb it, boy, that is the opposite of what we all need, right? And those healthy routines got my head right. Like, okay. And here's one last thing I'll say on this for now is we call them goal periods. So for us, okay, let's see.
goal or gold?
I can't attend full day. Goal, GOAL,
Okay.
like a small time frame. So for your
Mm,
listeners, maybe I'm thinking, okay, Labor Day just passed from now till Halloween. So it might be a season like that. I've got a 42-day challenge. I'm gonna do no sugar, or I'm gonna make sure I'm drinking 90 ounces of water and read 10 pages every day, whatever. It's some sort of a period of time. Well, during a day, it might say, I can't compartmentalize for the whole day, but I can sure as heck do it from 7:30 till 10:30. I can lock in. And then at 10:30, I'm going to give myself that permission to go for a walk, go hang out with my son, go relax. So I've only got to do it for 3 hours. And then by 11 or 11:30, I'm going to lock in till 2:30. And you just kind of get that neck. It's almost
yeah.
like the runner that's the aid station. I can't run 102 miles. You kidding me? That's ridiculous. But I can get to the next aid station.
Mm. No, that's brilliant. Brilliant. I can see. I hope there's a lot of light bulbs going on in people's minds because I get your point that you're just, you know, you can do various techniques like one that you just expressed there, or you can just look at the entirety of it all and go, I can't do that, but I
It's
can do it for two
soul
hours.
crushing. You got it.
Soul
And
crushing.
it will crush. And believe me, I've made the mistake over and over. So I'm a great example of how to do it the wrong way.
Mhm.
Because you
Amen.
put all that pressure on your shoulders and it just breaks your heart, And again, just to use the running metaphor, if someone's running 20 miles and it just blows your mind, well, just get to that next break where you can relax, have some water for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and then start fresh, do 2 more miles, whatever. But I think trying to take that principle to our day, our calendar, when
Mhm.
we're going through grieving. One of my good friends, coaches in Maryland, her husband passed very unexpectedly a couple months ago. And she's just, man, she's rock bottom, like anybody can
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah.
Her daughter, I believe, is 6. I mean, this was just like a very unexpected thing for her family. So she's going through it. We'll just call it it. Well, gosh, when us humans go through the storms, whatever level of the storm, how do we regain momentum in life and rebuild from that? That's what we're talking about.
Wow. I love the way you said that, though. I'm saying that very sincerely. How do we regain that momentum or a momentum? How do we get some kind of a stride going? That's very interesting. I spoke to a lady several months ago who talked about similarly where she was dealing with some very serious grief. And she talked about this idea of laying in bed and that, all the thoughts that are going around and questioning her capacity and all these other sorts of things. And ironically, to this conversation, she said, I learned to just sit up first.
Hmm.
I went, wow, yeah. And she said, and then I learned to turn sideways and drop my feet on the ground. And she used that as a metaphor that I just went, wow, man, and that's what you're talking about there, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. You got it. And you build from that. And that's
Practice.
momentum. That's momentum, and it's so
Yeah,
inspiring. And,
yeah.
just we all know perspective. When we lose perspective, we're
Hmm.
going to
That's
fail
right.
every time. When we regain perspective, okay, we're not alone. I'm not the first person that's gone through this. There's other people that live very joyful, fulfilled, purposeful lives that have gone through this and or much worse. Now I can breathe again. I've got some perspective. Now I can get that momentum, like you said, of sitting up, putting my feet on the ground, etc.
Wow, man, I just love that. Now, in your book, you introduce this idea of the RAFT technique, which I thought was fascinating, for handling crisis. And so I want to expand this for just a quick moment and suggest that in today's world, it appears to me that many, including myself at times, it's like we live in this perpetual state of crisis.
Mm,
We don't call it crisis, but this perpetual state of urgency or this perpetual state of constantly moving from one thing, chaos, and all these other sorts of things. So RAFT is about kind of handling crisis, right?
mm.
Can you tell us about RAFT and then maybe how one can apply that if what I'm saying is true, that we are in this perpetual state of crisis?
Yeah, I love it. I think it is true. And I think now I do want to clarify one thing.
Please.
Crisis, whether it's any level, this could be just something as simple as you leave to a meeting and you realize you forgot your phone and now you're going to be 5 minutes late.
Yes.
Or, you just whatever. Like it could be something that simple, or it could be something traumatic, a health situation, something where you lose your job, you have a financial hit that was unexpected. My wife just went through a crazy fraud scenario the last 3 weeks. She's had to change her phone number, all her
My.
bank accounts. I mean, she has nonstop been dealing with. So, whatever level the crisis or adversity, the RAFT principle, man, it really makes a difference. And I can't help but smile when I think about it. So, if we imagine going through life as a river, I took my boys river rafting a couple weeks ago, and in the Rogue River in Oregon,
Hmm.
and you're going through this river, and there's all these obstacles, but we know the destinations we want to get. We want to have a healthy marriage. We want to have financial peace. Not to steal Dave Ramsey's term, but
But
we
you
want
did.
to we want to make a difference in our community, et cetera. There's all these goals we have. Well, when the crap hits, the R of RAFT is an acronym, and the R is just simply realizing the event has occurred.
Okay.
So I'm imagining right now, you and I are locked in. We're recording this. Imagine my internet goes down
Hmm.
here in 20 seconds. And I've got this sudden, what the heck? Why is my Wi-Fi gone? Like,
Yeah.
well, okay, slow down. Just realize what's happened. The
Yeah.
second part of this is by far the most difficult for humans, and this is acceptance of my situation.
Mm.
Immediately, my emotions, I'm going to start sweating. I'm going to start getting flustered. I'm going to, whatever the emotions are that come out, I'm going to resist reality. So, right, let's say you're supposed to go for a great picnic tomorrow with your family or this weekend. It's your kid's birthday, you got an outdoor wedding, whatever, and you realize it's going to be thunderstorming. It's going to be rain. Dude, you have like there has to be some acceptance of the situation
Mhm.
before we can move on.
I
And
love
that
that.
again, when I resist reality, that's when I suffer.
Hmm. Hmm. I like that. Resisting reality. Yeah.
The weather's going to be, my internet went down.
Yeah.
The more I resist it and get upset by it, the more I will suffer. Traffic is bad today, whatever the thing
Wow.
is, right? My son was diagnosed, whatever level of acceptance. And so that part, how quickly can we accept our situation? is 99% of this game in my mind.
Wow.
And if you want to gamify it, some people go through something and it takes them the whole week to accept it. Others get there in a couple hours. And so that's a pivotal part of this. Now the F, as we keep going, once I've accepted my situation, I can now focus on what I can control. I can lock out of the
Mm,
garbage that I can't control, and
mm,
I can lock in on, okay, my internet just died. I'm supposed to be on with Kevin right now. Okay, I've got my backup. I'm going to call him on the phone. I've got another way to get it. I can now focus on a solution, something that I can control. That also allows me to breathe in perspective, to go
mm,
back to that
mm.
perspective word. Even when my son was diagnosed, there was a moment I talked about in the book where I remember one morning of getting to Seattle Children's and I was going to be there the whole day. And I parked in the parking lot and I was especially emotional. I was just not in a place to go in and see him yet because I was
Yeah.
quite frankly bawling and just really grieving. And I remember trying to compose myself before I got out of my truck. And I just I started looking around the parking lot and seeing, man, I saw a license plate from Oregon. I saw a license plate from Idaho. I saw a license plate from Wyoming, and realizing, man, some of these families have uprooted their whole lives to come to Seattle,
Oh, wow.
pulled their kids out of school, left their jobs, et cetera, to be as close to this hospital that I live 40 minutes away from.
Mm,
It was this overwhelming feeling of, I've got to get my crap together and quit whining about my situation. Other people have it much worse.
mm.
And that was like a pivotal moment of where I regained perspective and focused on what I can control,
Wow.
versus resisting the reality of it. So so then the last part, the T, and this is the beauty, this is the beautiful part of
Mm,
RAFT, is where we then transform this negative situation
mm,
and turn it into positive momentum, turn it into something great.
mm.
Uh, this is the significance part of it. If any of your listeners have been through a divorce, some of them have been through a bankruptcy. Some of them have been through a business failure or lost their job, et cetera. And we only see the bad in that at first. I
Mhm,
sure have.
mhm.
Dude, that is where the beauty is. You now have an opportunity to impact so many people because of your failure, your loss, your challenge, your hurt, because so many people are going through the same thing. They need hope. So we use this thing for good. And man, it's crazy how it actually gives fuel to the fire. It helps us kind of stand an inch taller and have a little more zest to our day.
Mm. Wow. In full transparency, sometimes I see these acronyms, like another speaker with another acronym, But man, this
Right.
one's got meat to it right here. This one's got some stuff to it. And I really appreciate that this is something that people can really, really use. And part of it, as I was listening to you talk, there's part of even though you didn't completely say it as you described this technique, was this idea of emotional intelligence. This kind of forces you into more emotional intelligence. I mean, I don't think it takes a, you know, most people understand that the more emotional you are, the less you think.
Hmm.
And this idea gives you a framework to back off a little bit and go, okay, let me just, you know, because somebody might say, well, yeah, I mean, of course I realize that, I'm in a freaking traffic jam and I'm late for a big time meeting that's going to cost me millions of dollars. I know that.
Hmm.
But you're saying, no, stop back and say something a little bit more usable. Okay, I'm in this situation here. I'm in a
Hmm.
crisis, and that tone settles you into start, to start to do something to get to that point of transforming that situation. And it
Yep.
may not work every time, but um, it's a great framework. I appreciate this.
Well, and it's a daily thing, Kevin. This is what I'm
Mm,
sure your listeners are being
mm,
flooded with memories.
mm-hmm,
I mean, I can't tell you how many flights I've had delayed this year where you know when you land, you've got the plan. I'm
mm-hmm,
going on this flight for a reason.
mm-hmm,
And now my plans are all
mm,
jacked.
mm,
Well, what are you going to do with that? Like,
mm.
welcome to life.
Yeah.
There's just this stuff daily that's going on. And I think the ones that are able to cope
Hmm.
with that, the ones that are able to take it in stride, and
Yes.
you can kind of almost, you almost have this peaceful grin of like, we know the highest state or emotion we can experience really is peace. I'm not
Mm,
going to let this rattle me.
mm,
I'm not
mm,
going to get offended
mm, mm,
and obviously it still does. Life gets us for the
mhm.
minute, but we're able to bounce back
You
quicker.
got it. You got it. And I want to encourage the viewers and the listeners that this idea of RAFT, realizing, accepting, focusing, and then transforming a situation, that you don't just think about this as sort of this framework or this this acronym, but as what we think of as a soft tool, a tool that's in your toolkit, in your mind, that, as you just said, you may draw on that tool many times throughout the day. So it's something that's there and readily available, as opposed to, oh, what was it that Ron said about that? No, man, just put it up here and use it. It's a fabulous thing. Now, you also talk about, I'm just trying to be conscientious of our time here. You also talk about this idea of confidence anchors. I love that. I have sort of it's not really a pushback question, but a different twist on the question about that. And that is that, you know, how does somebody, and certainly I had to ask you to explain the confidence anchors, but the question is how, when somebody doesn't have a lot of wins to draw on,
Mm.
how do they build confidence anchors, or how do they use them? I guess that's the question.
Yeah, love it. And first of all, I think we would eradicate that belief. We all have a lot of wins to draw on.
Okay.
If we examine everybody's lives, there are things everyone on here, I get chills talking about this.
Mm,
You've done that. Way to go. Like we have to notice it, celebrate it, embrace it, not in ego or arrogance or pride, but in hopefully thankfulness of like if you believe in a higher power, you thank that, man, thank you for helping me get through that. It's not like yay me all the time. So please don't
mm,
listen to me wrongly because
mm,
that's not going to serve anybody. But think about all the people that have been raised with imperfect parents, everybody.
mm-hmm.
Teachers that weren't the greatest, and you
Mhm,
got through. Maybe you didn't make the sports team, and you bounced back and you tried a new sport. Whatever. There's all these examples of you didn't score very well in the first test in that class, but you bounced back and you still got a decent grade. Or so it's even the small things matter. They count. Of
mm,
course, someone could say, "Look at when I got straight A's and got the scholarship to the Ivy League school," and well, that's a massive confidence anchor, right? But
mm,
even the little ones count. And I'm as a parent right now, I'm trying to point these out to my kids. Like, dude, that's like you. Waiting and not the results. It's easy to compliment the result, but the effort,
effort.
attitude, you got it, kid. Man, I love it. I think we're really wired the same way.
Hmm.
And I love how you bounced back. I love how that was unfair and you didn't hold, you forgave them. Just noticing principles of our kids and affirming them, speaking life into them. If you're a leader or a boss on this call, same thing with your salespeople or your employees. Are you noticing the little things they're doing? Hey, by the way, I've just been thinking the last couple weeks, man, you're always on time. I love how you show up for the meetings on time. You seem to be very engaged. I just want to say thank you. That's so like you. If we get in a world where we're constantly affirming and seeing things that other people do right,
Mm,
they then are able to draw on those confidence anchors that someone called out in them. Like, that's true. I am on time. I am good with my finances. I am make good, healthy food decisions or whatever. Uh, Now, let's imagine that life's unfair and nobody complimented us or affirmed us.
mhm,
Well,
mhm.
that's where you got to. That's why I go out in the woods and run a lot, so I
Mhm.
can think more. And you can draw on those times of like,
Mhm.
okay. And you also, it doesn't always have to be your successes, it's human nature successes. Think about
Mm,
all the humans that you respect and look up to
mm,
and revere. Think about what Nelson Mandela did. Think about what Mother Teresa did. Think about what
mm,
Martin MLK did. Like this is a
mm.
human thing that can also give us confidence.
Yeah, that's fascinating because, and I'm jumping ahead just a tad here, but you also talk about this idea of oh shoot, went in and right back out. So I'm going to keep moving on to
Okay.
another question here. I'll think of it in just a second. But you made me think about this. It's so important what you're saying about these confidence anchors, because as you're talking, I'm thinking this. So I coach a middle school tennis team
Mm.
as an aside. And first of all, what a joy. And second of all, to all those watching, do something for our youth out there. Do something to help raise them up. And this is what I've learned is such a joy and gift to me that I can really work with middle schoolers. So I had to throw that little PSA in there. But here's the thing. Just yesterday, we were playing a very tough team. Now, again, these are 11, 12, 13-year olds.
Mm.
And I think she was a 12-year-old, one of our number two player. She was, she was getting beat pretty bad. I think she was down 5-1 in an 8-game pro set. And then suddenly it was 6-all. And she ended up losing the match. And of course, she was very disappointed.
Mm.
But I went to her and I said, Ada, uh, wow. I looked and you were 5 down and you came back, and that is hard to do.
Wow.
Congratulations, for
Yeah.
working hard and keeping in the game. And even though you lost, young lady, you won. And that's what you're talking about, right? That idea.
Bingo.
Yeah.
You got it. Bingo.
Wow.
Amen. And if every listener, boy, you talk about one of the most joyful ways to live is to look for that in other people, where you're constantly serving those around you.
That's right.
So Kevin, that's a great example of with the
Yeah.
middle school tennis team. And it's
Yeah.
and obviously we have to do that for ourselves. Like,
Yes.
what are times where you have compartmentalized pretty well in the last year?
Yeah.
What are times where you had something unfair, but you didn't let that harbor, get bitter about it? Dude, notice that. That's a big win. That's a confidence anchor. Then the next time storms hit, we have that anchor to center us and help us get through the storm.
That's incredible. Now I remember what I was saying, because you talk about, um, quite remember the term, but about a support network, a community, I think it was the term that you use in your book, something to this effect. I apologize for not remembering, but you can draw on that community, right? Your support network to help you with these confidence anchors. As a matter of fact, um, you know, if that's not there, go find you a community of people that will support you. And we're
Truth.
not talking about, like you said, we're not talking about helicopter parents. We're not talking about somebody that's going to rah all the time, but somebody that will help you remember, Kevin, you came back from a 6-1 loss and it's really hard to do. Way to go.
You got it. Investing time with people like that is probably the
Mm,
greatest thing someone could do, because it's true. We can't help but be programmed by the people around us. And we all know people that are just constant naysayers and bitter about this and talking about divisive political I don't know, stuff. Hey, I'm not saying don't love them unconditionally, but also notice where you're spending most of your time, because that's bound to wear on you eventually. And I have to consciously keep those times short and then go be around people that, I don't care if you got to get more in a church group, AA, go serve at volunteer, be around people that uplift you. That's so true.
it's a funny that many years ago, when, oh goodness, his name just slipped right out of my head. He was a famous country star. I can't remember his name. Even if you're not a country fan, you would recognize his name. He passed away, and Tanya Tucker, who was very close friends with him, he was quite a bit older, and she was on the radio talking about their relationship, and and this was his anchor, and many people didn't know that they were part of his anchor, and he said he would call her up sometime, because was a mega superstar. And he said, Tanya, he said, I think I'm gonna have to go out in public and build up my self-esteem again, which just cracked me up,
Mm,
because
awesome.
whether he meant that or not, if he was feeling down,
Yeah.
as a superstar, country superstar, he would just head out on the streets, and within moments, people are like, "Can I take a picture with you? My dad
Yeah.
listened to you. You're the best," and then he goes back, and that's a good thing right there.
Yeah, it is. And a lot of us aren't famous musicians, but we can all coach the middle school tennis team or volunteer where people
Yeah,
do look at you in that light. And that's
correct.
very uplifting.
You got it. You got it. So maybe just a couple more quick questions. And, one of them is about you talk a lot about, and I think this is maybe maybe the most important. In fact, Stephen Covey would say it is the first habit in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is to be proactive. But if you listen to him talk about it, what he is actually saying is to be proactive and be a highly effective person. The first thing you need to do is take 100% responsibility for your life, your
Mm.
past, your present, and where you're going in the future. And I believe that's what you're talking about when you talk about, taking ownership.
You got it. Yeah, it is. You feel the difference. It's easy to walk around and there's just a lot of us that have pointed fingers. If I only had a better network, if you're in real estate and like, oh, if I only had a better circle of influence, or if I only had parents that were the country club, I think of it often. And I have to kind of fight back with my mind. I have to
Right.
battle that thought because
Yes.
it's not that we don't want to shed responsibility or point the
Right.
finger all day. We
Yeah.
all do. But when that happens, to have that default where it's like, whoa, 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 slow down. If this is on me, and taking responsibility. And if you're listening to this right now and you struggle with it, put a little note on your bathroom mirror. It's up to
Wow.
you. You got, something that reminds you. Put some quotes, put some just because I wrote a book on this and talk on podcasts about this kind of stuff doesn't mean I don't mess it up daily.
Yeah.
So I
I
have to have reminders. I mean, if you have any viewers, I've always got things with me that remind me of these
yeah.
principles to be recentered when
Yeah.
I get off track.
Yeah. So, just in these few moments, Ron, do you have your book handy? Can you lift it up and show it to the folks, and maybe
I
just
better.
briefly tell us about it right there? I'll hold it up
Yeah,
just a little bit lower so people can recognize it when they see it, when they go to Amazon to get it. So tell us just briefly about it, and then finally, tell us where people can find you, connect with you, whatever the case might be.
awesome, Kevin. Yeah, the short version of this book, it's all about impact. It's like, in my opinion, wealth is defined as impact.
Mm,
Heck yeah, go buy the cool car, go work hard to get that watch and take that trip and buy the second home, and nothing wrong with having some. At the end of the day, we all know a lot of really financially wealthy, sad people that are not fulfilled, people
yeah.
that have even taken their lives.
Hmm.
And to me, the wealth that we're looking for is in impact.
Mm,
Whose lives are you altering? Who can look back and say you altered the way they think? You
wow.
helped them maybe have more of a purpose. You were an example to them, etc. So this book talks a lot about, if we believe that, what are the 6 key traits or principles that help us widen our impact,
Wow.
society and the world around us. And so that's where we get deep into, what does focus look like? What does accountability and taking ownership look like, et cetera? And then strategies on how to get it, not just defining it, but what are very specific, tangible
Mhm.
strategies to redefine my belief barriers, to have more confidence, et cetera.
That's incredible. Wow. It's just so well stated there about your book. So where can folks find you, Ron?
So the book title, redefiningpossible.com, is
Mm,
probably the best.
okay.
Amazon's great, but just, yeah, you can Google Ron Alford, or go on Instagram or LinkedIn, or any of that stuff is fine too. It's all pretty easy to find. But the redefiningpossible.com is probably one easy way to go.
Perfect. And I will have all of this in the show notes, but I just like for folks to speak it out loud. So listen, honestly, I can't thank you enough for being a guest on Grow Yourself. You're an awesome individual, Ron Alford, and I appreciate you.
Well, Kevin, back at you. I will be honest. My youngest child is 12, my
Mm.
daughter, and I sat there thinking, man, I wish she had a coach like you.
Mm.
Seriously, whether it's for her dance, her track, her softball, whatever,
Mm.
what you're doing for people, obviously your listeners, but even the tennis team you talked about,
Mm.
we need more of this. So
Yeah,
thanks for having me on here.
100% agree. The pleasure is completely mine.